Excuse me, but I've got something to tell you first. Thank you for ruining my life!
Everybody's always blaming me for everything.
So, Donald Trump has been president for the last 4 years, and today we're going to talk about that. Well, more specifically, we're going to talk about the presidency, Trump's administration, the 2020 election, Biden's win, and where the whole thing leaves us. The whole heat of this thing really happened a month ago when Biden was proclaimed winner, but the inauguration, you know.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
I, Ronald Reagan.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
It's coming up soon. Trump has been drawing out his loss in courts, which has only begun to stop recently. I hope this video will be of assistance for any confused US citizens or non-US citizens just looking at the US like,
Patricia! Get it together, sweetie. We have a show this weekend.
First things first, disclaimers because YouTube's comment section can be quite... I won't get into that. But I'm not an expert. I just did a bit of light research. I am going to focus on the facts, but note that every news source has a bit of bias and that some biases are less than others. So therefore, some news sources are more reliable. And finally, as a Christian who is interested in politics, I recognize that no president or presidential candidate will ever be a great representation of biblical truths and ideals. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's just start with the basics. What is the American presidency? So if you look at the US Constitution, it clearly describes the layout for what the presidency is going to entail. Of course, the framers of the government could not count for everything, so it is the basic structure of the presidency. And so how someone becomes president is 3 qualifications. They have to be a natural-born citizen of the U.S., they have to be at least 35 years old in age, have to be a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. Right now in the U.S., there are 2 main political parties, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. Each time there's a presidential election, each party holds caucuses and primaries to decide who is going to be in the general election. The general election is the election that determines who becomes president. And that's what we just recently had this November 2020. So again, to select that nominee, there are caucuses and primaries, and then each major party holds a national convention. And at that convention, they select the presidential nominee, and that nominee picks their candidate for who's going to be their vice president. Before the general election happens, each presidential nominee campaigns throughout the United States to gain support of the general population. They say their campaign points, what they're standing for, what they want to change in the government, what they want to improve, all to gain the support of the population. Then the general population goes to the polling stations, sends in their ballots, and votes for who they want to be president. But the vote that the people cast go to the state electors. And the electors' votes are the ones that truly determine the outcome of the presidential election. So the popular vote, the vote of the general election, does not determine who wins. Instead, those people are voting so the electors can vote on their behalf. And each state has a specific number of electors, and the number of electors is equal to the number of state senators plus the number of representatives. And in total, there are 538 electors. So a presidential candidate needs 270 elector votes to win. And yeah, that's just a quick run through of what the presidency and how you become president in the United States. So Trump's presidency. A lot of people thought he was going to run like as a joke.
And then of course there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
have any political experience. But many people liked that about him. And along with that, they liked his divisive rhetoric that esteemed Republicans over Democrats. So let's talk about Trump's presidency. There's a lot about Trump and Trump's presidency that I can't really cover in this whole video. For the most part, people either love him or hate him. Let me just go over some good things that happened in his administration. The EPA gave $100 million for Flint water infrastructure. They expanded domestic oil production. They signed the FOSTA and the SESTA Act that helped fight human and sex trafficking. And so for more on the list of good things that happened during this Trump administration, you can check out the links below. I'll have a lot of links below on the resources that I used to make this video. But also there was a lot of bad that came from his administration. When he first became president, there was a lot of sexual assault cases against him, and people were coming out against him, and his own words were even shown to be aggressive towards women. There was the refugee travel ban, dubbed the Muslim ban, the investigation of Russian interference in the election, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. There was so much international relations hostility directly caused by Trump's comments and his tweets. There was the zero tolerance policy for immigration, causing children to be separated from their parents at the border and oftentimes caged and treated really badly. There was a huge Mueller investigation. There was a whistleblower that led to the impeachment of Trump and the impeachment inquiry of Trump and eventual impeachment of Trump in the House of Representatives. The COVID pandemic began and Trump left the World Health Organization. And further throughout the Black Lives Matter movement, Trump did not condemn police brutality, racism, or qualified immunity. And there's a lot to be said there. But to finally continue, Trump tries to overturn the election results in the 2020 election. And so you can see that a lot of people were eager to get Trump out of the White House. Those who didn't support him, that was either Democrats or Republicans who saw the bad and did not agree with what he was doing and wanted to change. So not only Democrats wanted a new president, but a lot of Republicans too did change their mind. And so moving on to the election, specifically the Democrats who are running against Trump. There were many early prominent candidates, including Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, but ultimately Joe Biden was the elected presidential nominee for the 2020 election. So I thought I would just touch a little bit on who Joe Biden is as a politician. So he was elected to the U.S. Senate at 29, being the 5th youngest senator elected at the time. He was Delaware's longest serving senator and adjunct professor at a branch of Widener University School of Law. He ran for POTUS, he ran for President of the United States in the past, and during the 2020 election, he was one of the more moderate candidates for president. And now currently he has won the US president election for 2020 with Kamala Harris as his vice president, despite what Trump is trying in the courts. Again, for more information, look at the links below. I'm not an expert. And so Joe Biden's campaign points were that he is going to have a national contact tracing program for COVID-19, that he's going to raise minimum wage and invest in green energy. He's going to have criminal justice reform. He's going to rejoin the Global Climate Accord. With immigration, he's going to stop child separation on the border and support DACA. And finally, he pledged to expand free college. And so that's a lot of points that he had. Obviously, every president has campaign points that they don't always live up to because of some other restrictions within the government and the checks and balances and that whole system. But an optimistic viewpoint that I have, I feel like every president does try to meet the campaign points that they set out in the beginning of their campaign. This election, Biden made history. There was the most recorded votes in a presidential election ever. 68,498,516 votes total for Joe Biden. He made history with Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris is the first woman, first Black woman, first Black and Asian American woman to be vice president in the United States. And that is the highest office a woman has ever held in the United States, which is really, whether you like Kamala Harris or not, it's really just an amazing thing to hear as a female, as a woman. To be able to have that level of representation is really powerful to hear as a woman who has really, there's never been any woman that high. Like, that's crazy, whether you like her or not. Obviously, nobody's perfect, but that's just an amazing feat for a woman. So it's really making history. And this was the 100 years of women voting in elections. And also, it was an election during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, all in all, it was a very historic election. And so now transitioning into office has been quite difficult, as Trump has not made a concession speech. And this is the speech where the presidents kind of welcome the next president into office and formally announce that they're stepping down from office and concede. There are some instances where, voting problems can happen, but many court cases have already been ruled, and all the way to the Supreme Court have ruled that this is not the case here. Currently, Biden has been introducing his nominees for his cabinet. There is an investigation hanging over him into his son. For Biden transition updates, you can look at the link in the description with NPR's list of updates. So, what does this all mean for us? Yes, the presidency is very important, and politics shape really how we live here in the world, and that's just the fact of life. Most people, the most vulnerable people, are also the people who are most affected by politics. So there are issues that still remain despite the fact that Biden will be president. Racism is still prominent in our country and in the world. Climate change is still progressing as sustainability is not prioritized within businesses and governments. Many people still remain unemployed. And people are dying because of COVID. And many people are still living hard lives without basic necessities or care. Human and sex trafficking is still a major global industry. And the rights of children are often overlooked. Our generation must still care about all of these things as human beings. It is good to advocate and care for others. Being empathetic is an important thing, as many people do not have the political voice that is needed to make a change, a lasting change, to provide the basic necessities and care, and just those who do have an opportunity, which many of us via social media and other areas, and as we go out into the workforce, have the opportunity to be a voice in politics and to be an influence over our elected officials. But once they're elected, we have the opportunity to sway them and to advocate, to lobby, to get them to vote for what's right and what helps people. And so, that being said, if you're watching this video still, I want you to know that the presidency doesn't mean everything. It is important, but it doesn't mean everything. It may be obvious to many people, but just because Joe Biden has won does not mean that the problems just go away. I believe that there will be policy change, which is a great step, but the most important change is heart change. Nothing will change or get better until we do, until the people do. The politicians are always going to be playing to what we are feeling, and if we want to be divisive, the politicians will always be divisive. If we don't want to see that division in our country, we have to start with us and start in our hearts and looking at things different. The division in our country is causing less and less things to get done, but more and more hate to be created against one another. And so this is just a reminder that change starts within each and every one of us, each and every one of you. And ultimately, I know that seeking the kingdom of God and storing our hope in heaven is the only way to create true, lasting hope, and is the beginning of a change of heart. So I hope you guys liked this video. It was a little different than my usual content, but I am a political science major, so I guess it is my niche. But again, there are helpful links in the bio. I just wanted to make this a fun, entertaining video, but also educating about the presidency. And so I really hope you check out those links. Please go. I am not an expert. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.